Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for the Altman Health Talk. We have the pleasure of having two guest speakers today from Great Start for Great Futures, Krista, Allison, and Jen Griffing. So I will go ahead and turn it over to them and they'll go ahead and get started. So thank you ladies for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us today. It's been a pleasure. So I'm looking this way because my co-partner in crime is sitting right next to me. So we are still doing our social distancing, but we are co-presenting today and we're so happy to be here. So thank you so much, Julie. My name is Krista Allison. I represent Stark Education Partnership today as a part of also the Great Start for Great Futures Coalition. So thank you for having us here today.
And my name is Jen Griffing. I am the Regional Early Literacy Specialist for State Support Team 9. We serve families, school districts, and all of our community partners through Stark, Wayne, and Holmes County. And we're very excited to share with you our content today around the power of language nutrition, and are excited that we're addressing literacy starting before birth and beyond.
So thank you for having us again, Altman. Thank you so much, Julie, for hosting this Altman Health Talk conversation. And what we want all of you to know is that there are going to be 5 key takeaways that we're going to be listing for you today. So throughout the chat, you're going to see these 5 key takeaways just kind of popping up there. And these are just going to be takeaways that we're going to be walking you through throughout the conversation today. So we hope that you'll be engaged like we are over this time frame, and you'll ask some great questions, but we do want to put those key takeaways in there for all of you. And so now we just want to see who's in the crowd. So this is kind of a getting to know you, and we want to know who's there. And so we put in here, since we are approaching we are in November, we're approaching Thanksgiving, we want to do a grateful check-in. So if you could type in the chat your name, and what are you grateful for? Just really quickly, we just want to gauge. We're looking at some beautiful babies there. So that always makes us feel cuddly, right? Right, Jen? Warm inside. So we're just so excited. So if you can just put in there who you are, maybe your role, whether it's personal, professional, just type that in the chat real quick. Okay, so thank you so much for typing that in. We're so happy again that you are with us. And it's just an opportunity to come together to talk about the power of language nutrition. So take a look at this quick quote here, which we find is powerful. Today's consensus in the fields of neuroscience, education, and developmental psychology reveals that a child's experiences between birth and the age of 5 have an enormous impact on the ability to thrive throughout life, from academic achievement to health and to future earnings as an adult. Now we put some of this, because it's a pretty big quote, we put some of this in bold for you. So take a look at that bold. A child's experiences between birth and the age of 5 have an enormous impact on the ability to thrive throughout life. For some of us, we're like, really? I don't know if I knew that. Well, it matters. It matters. What we know is that better education equals healthier lives. We know that education leads to better jobs and income, but it leads to longer and healthier lives. We know that there's a link between more education and better health is stronger than you think. So take a look at that last piece. The link between more education and better health is stronger than you think. And as you're thinking about that, we're just putting up our very first key takeaway in the chat for you, which is better education equals healthier lives. So I'll show you a couple slides that represent that. This slide here is from our source Talk With Me Baby. And you're going to see here from the chart that it really shows the generational effects, the long-lasting effects of education and its link to health. And you'll see here, right here on the side, the infant mortality rate, and then you'll also see here total years of a mother's educational attainment. And you'll see that basically that more education, where it says here, the more years of education a mother has received, the more likely her infant is to survive and thrive. The infant mortality rate, which is listed there per 1,000 live births for women who never graduated from high school, is nearly doubled than that of a woman who has a college degree. It's a stark reality for us. This particular slide just gives you another set of factors to consider in terms of reduced risk. As you can see here, where it shows an additional 4 years of education reduces a range of health risks from diabetes, heart disease, being overweight, as well as smoking. And this is all related to education. I want to drive this home just a little bit more closer, because a lot of what we're showing you right now are statistics that are kind of a global statistic, but let's take it right from the framework of Ohio. What you're seeing in this slide is the Ohio infant mortality rate by race and ethnicity, and this is taken from 2016 from the Ohio Department of Health. Now, what I want you to look at is you'll notice here that within this, you're going to see all races, and you'll see the total number of infant deaths, and then you'll also see the infant mortality rate per 1,000 live births at 7.4. You'll then start to see from that various races. We have white, Black, American Indian, Asian Pacific Islander, unknown, and then you'll also see ethnicity, Hispanic and non-Hispanic listed there. As you're looking at that information, a couple things that I want to point out, and we want to point out from this slide, is that Ohio experienced 1,024 infant deaths in 2016. Now, Ohio did experience a slight increase in its infant mortality rate between 2015 and 2016, and that was from 7.2 to 7.4. But if you are outside of Stark County per se, think about what this research looks like within your own county. Now, here in Stark County, we have an organization known as the Thrive Project, where our county took a deep dive focus, and they looked at the racial disparities that exist that lead to infant mortality. They took steps to reduce infant mortality rates and the disparity in birth outcomes relative to white and Black babies. Now, through their focused collaboration, infant mortality rate and the disparity ratio between Black and white infant deaths has decreased. And the disparity ratio rate also continues to improve. One of the things that Great Start for Great Futures is looking at is, as a coalition, we have been intentional also about ensuring that our partners are not only looking at infant mortality, but they're also looking at this disparity rate as well. And in taking this data, coming together as a community to make the necessary adjustments through services and supports to support our entire community. Basically, we are maximizing partnership opportunities at all levels to decrease the infant mortality rate.
Well, thank you, Krista. As we continue to lay the foundation for our talk today, which you know is titled The Power of Language Nutrition, I just want to share a little bit about my background. And so hopefully that'll help you get a better understanding of where we're coming from with sharing this information with you. First, thank you. We're so grateful for the diversity of our audience today, and so many of our partners are represented in the conversation today, so we're so thankful for that. But my background is a classroom teacher. I have my reading endorsement, and I primarily taught in kindergarten and first grade and had some time in second grade. But as I began to really work from more of a community perspective, I have fallen in love with this idea of brain development and brain research. And I already had such a diversity in the children that came into my classroom at 5. And we all know how much our background experiences contribute to how we're able to process information. But I was able to see some differences in children. And so I really came to understand and realize, you know, how much language played a role as my children were beginning to learn to read. And so this has been a very exciting part of my journey. And I'm very thankful to be able to be a part of the Great Start for Great Futures Coalition, because we do have such wonderful collaboration in our area. So I'm going to dive a little deeper around this brain development side. And you'll see our next key takeaway is here. And that is really that brains are built, not born. So language fundamentally builds our brains starting before birth. And it's really the only organ that's not fully developed at birth. So we think about that trimester development of a baby as we're growing our babies. And then we think at the end of 9 months, if all is healthy and well, we have this beautiful, fully formed baby. But we often don't think about what we now think of as the 4th trimester, and that is this critical period of growing a baby's brain. So as you can see, 90% of critical brain development happens in the first 5 years of life, with 1 million new connections being formed every second. And that, I just think every time I read it, I need to stop and pause and think through that. It's just such a powerful opportunity. And we are all born seeking responsive interactions. And what's amazing is we're learning more each day about how those interactions, or lack thereof, can really shape our futures. So as you can see on this next slide, it's another way to present to you that 90% of a child's brain development happens before age 5. So you'll see throughout our presentation today, we'll show you some words and quotes, and we'll have some visuals and some videos, because we are educators. So we like to make sure that we share really important different information in different ways, so we can provide that access for all of you.
I think we talked about that too, that we need to make sure we throw that in there for everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you'll see on the next slide, here's another image, and a baby's brain does grow 80% during the first 18 months of life. So as you can see, we have a photo here of a sleeping little child, because we know when that really fast growth happens physically in their brain, it's tiring, right? It's a lot of effort for your body to do that. So it's just a really unique way to think about, we don't really visualize that brain growth. So we wanted to show it with you, to you in that way. But another thing that a child is resting from is really all those interactions with their environment. So another thing we want you to consider and think about is how emotions boost memory. So this isn't just an academic conversation, it's a very social, emotional, whole child environment conversation. So we know that when emotions are engaged, the brain is activated. And emotions create this release of chemicals that really help to fix things in the memory. And those early interactions really do have decisive and long-lasting impact on how people develop. So they're a parent and adult's ability to learn, and also in their capacity to regulate emotions. So we know that emotional bonding begins in the first days and weeks of life, and of course, even before that. And it really is the primary source of a child's security, their self-esteem, their self-control, and their social skills. So on the next slide, we show you a little bit more specifically how the brain develops over time. So as you can see on the left side, that white part is actually the prenatal period. So up until that center pink rectangle, that's before birth, the prenatal period. Then we have the first year in the center where you see all that overlapping activity, especially with language there in the center. And that's what Krista referred to earlier with our Thrive partners. That's where our community partners in Thrive are really so supportive. They have direct connection with our families. They work in homes from that newborn through that infant period of time. And then you will see on the right side, you will see that's from age 1 all the way through about 19 months or so. So what we want you to see, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is that all of this development really is happening early, before we have really the child's ability to show us, right, what's happening in their brains. So as you can see, there's that first line is those sensory pathways of vision and hearing that are developing. But as you can also see, there's language beginning there, and those higher level cognitive functioning skills, such as memory, are really continuing to develop there. So by the age of 3, as you can see, about 85% of those neural connections are formed, and that really does provide the foundation for the long-term brain development of a child. So without this strong foundation, that higher level brain circuitry does not really function optimally without those proper environments. So the quality of their early environment and experiences really does determine the strength of these foundational skills. So what we do is we think about this as a period of great vulnerability for children, but also a period of great opportunity. And that's what we really strive for with Great Start for Great Futures.
And I think what's so amazing about that is that not many parents really understand and know this. So when we go out and we talk with families about this, they go, really? We didn't realize that as a mom who's got this little baby growing in her, she's thinking, I didn't realize that all this is happening all at this time. I thought, we have to wait for the baby to get here before the real work starts. So I think it's so amazing that when you show this visual, it just really hits everyone in a different place.
Yeah, it's been really interesting as we share this with multiple people in multiple roles. I think a lot of us, some of us get to do this work in a professional capacity too, but personally, I think a lot of us connect to that. I know we had a unique opportunity when we were working with our community health workers. Yes. We had a pregnant mama in the audience, and it was very sweet. The more we continued to talk, we saw her kind of moving back. She was rubbing her belly. She was really engaged in realizing how powerful of an opportunity that she had to impact her child. And I think a lot of us.
It felt good. It felt good when you can share that information with parents and caregivers, and this light bulb goes off, and they go, I didn't realize that I am my child's first and best teacher. And it starts so early.
It does start so early. And I think what we love about this message is that it's positive, it's proactive, and we get to look people in the eye and say, this is free. You don't need anything. All you need is you. So we are grateful to take part in helping to help people realize the opportunity they have to impact the life of their children.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so as a result, as we continue to learn all of these things, and so I think I love the opportunity to co-present, because then you can quote your co-presenter. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to do that. As we continue to learn this and sat in our different roles and roles we play in the community, we just kind of had to summarize it this way. So we have all that brain research we just shared with you. It's very important. We need to know it, but we get to this point where we say, you don't begin at 3, and we're talking about age 3. We can't begin at 5. We need to begin before birth. And that's my partner here, Krista Allison. That's the way she summarized it, and I think it's great.
All right. You have something exciting. You ready for me to go for it?
Sure.
All right. So what we have next here is just a video where we've talked a little bit about this education piece. So that's how we started. We talked about how education is important for our families, our caregivers, our community members. We've talked about this notion of brain development, but now we're going to link in this with you a little bit about this science behind the language nutrition, this brain architecture. The Center of the Developing Child at Harvard University actually created this short video. And so we want to show it to you today because we think that it helps to pull some of these pieces together. So here you go.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
So as Krista just mentioned, as the video Krista played just mentioned, everything truly is connected. And we're going to kind of make what feels like a jump to the other end right now. But again, I think it's all important that we talk about how we got to this point and how we and how our roles as we've come together really kind of connect together to support this work. Ohio, the state of Ohio, and of course across the nation has something called the third grade reading guarantee. And the third grade reading guarantee really is based on the fact that third grade reading proficiency at third grade is a really powerful indicator for future academic success, has a strong connection to high school graduation, and really just life stability. So all in all, when children aren't reading proficiently by third grade, we know that the outcomes aren't positive generally for children. And so third grade reading really is a critical milestone. So as I mentioned, I tend to be that kind of positive, proactive person. I really do love the brain development and the opportunity side of this work. But as I left the classroom, my job was also to continue to support district leadership, building leadership, and teachers who were working to teach children language and literacy skills. And I continued to find myself and my heart going out to them, and having been in their shoes, continually having teams come back and say, we just feel like we can't do enough. Like we just kind of are struggling on the hamster wheel a little bit. You know, we know that there's more we can do to help these outcomes. And how do we really best intervene with children who are coming to us with some clear language challenges?
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I started to see from my perspective in education, but also working with the community through Stark Education Partnership and Great Starts, is that from a community standpoint, community members and families and caregivers not making that connection either. So what you see is that you have a disconnect. You have parents and caregivers thinking, well, the school's going to do this. And then you have the school thinking on the other end, well, isn't the parent working on this? Isn't the caregiver working on this? And so part of that bridge is how do you bridge those two pieces together for both to recognize that each has an important role in this, and that, yes, it starts with that parent and the caregiver, and then it's then passed off, but it's still a shared partnership all the way through to the school. And those two roles together can really help to support that child to overcome that third grade reading guarantee and basically be successful over their life. So those are the things that I think through our partnership, what we're seeing is that those conversations have to be intentional. They have to happen more often. And we really have to really educate our community members, no matter where you sit, in terms of that importance of literacy and reading, but recognizing that, again, it starts before birth.
Absolutely. And as you can see, we, from the education perspective, we always say the ability to read by the end of third grade is an important indicator of those later academic success as well as economic success. And it really does mark a time instructionally from the classroom perspective where children really are making that shift from learning to read to reading to learn. So I'm really proud, I think, as the result of some of these efforts of our principals and our district leadership who are saying, you know what, we used to really hold on to doing everything we could for children from the minute they enter our doors. And from a community perspective, that conversation is changing from all our children are all of our children, from prenatal, from before birth and beyond. So we're really excited and we're really proud and grateful for the leadership at the Ohio Department of Education. We have Ohio's plan to raise literacy achievement, which we say very often is really Ohio's plan to raise language and literacy achievement, and really just that recognition that this work really does start in those very early years because of what we know about how the brain develops. So we're really grateful that we are all on the same team, and it's really going to be beneficial for our children.
And with the whole child framework, it just all comes together to support that literacy, but it supports that whole child all the way through.
Absolutely. So this brings us to our key takeaway number 3. And we know, based on everything we've shared with you, that language experiences are a strong predictor of children's later success. So talking with their children early and often truly is one of the most important things that families and caregivers can do to build a strong foundation for their children's education. So it provides them not only the best opportunity to grow healthy brains, but also healthy bonds that will last a lifetime. So we've come to my favorite time. This is where Krista is a good partner for me because she keeps me on target because I can get real excited about this. The concept of language nutrition.
Now, before you go there on this, I know that a lot of people have said, language nutrition, what is that? And so every time we use that word, people, they just kind of sit and go, okay, this should be good. This should be good. So we're going to tell you this is good, because when you hear it, you're going to say, oh, that makes sense. I wish I would have coined it.
I wish I would have coined it.
I do.
Yes, we were doing a lot of this work. And so we are fortunate to say that, obviously this brain research isn't local. This is international work that's happening. And so you will see many things cited throughout our presentation. So from Harvard University to the work with Talk With Me Baby, 30 million words. There are a lot of people doing great work out there. So we are just thankful to be able to kind of bring it together. And so let's talk about language nutrition.
Yeah, and then to speak about it in a way where when we use these two words together, it just resonates with people. So we're going to show you guys, drum roll please, what is language nutrition, that actual definition of that, or at least how we're putting it together for you today.
Yes. So what is language nutrition? Language nutrition is the use of language that is sufficiently rich in engagement, quality, quantity, and context, and it nourishes a child neurologically, socially, and linguistically. So like we said, that 4th trimester of development, you're feeding your child's body with healthy foods, and water and everything it needs to develop, but you're also doing the same thing with the brain through language.
And we also put in there, Jen, that 4th key takeaway.
Yes.
The quality and quantity of language, like healthy foods, is critical to brain development. So we're just going to let that sit with you for a minute, because when you think about it, you go, yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. And some of these things, as we talk to community members and caregivers and family members about this, when we say it and we put it in those terms, the light bulb really goes off, and it just resonates with people really well.
Yeah.
So I just love that 4th key takeaway.
Yes, nourishing your child with words. And we know that parents are the primary nourishers, and they have the greatest opportunity to do that. But what we love about this work is that we all have a role to play in that.
Exactly. So in this next video, we're going to actually show you what this language nutrition looks like through what's called serve and return. So it's just a really quick short video, but we want to show you this language nutrition. What is it as we walk this out? What does this look like? Take a look.
The key to forming strong brain architecture is what's known as serve and return interaction with adults. In this developmental game, new neural connections form in the brain as young children instinctively serve through babbling, facial expressions, and gestures. And adults return the serve, responding in a very directed, meaningful way. It starts very early in life, when a baby coos and the adult interacts and directs the baby's attention to a face or hand. This interaction forms the foundation of brain architecture upon which all future development will be built. It helps create neural connections between all the different areas of the brain, building the emotional and cognitive skills children need in life. For example, here's how it works for literacy and language skills. When the baby sees an object, the adult says its name. This makes connections in the baby's brain between particular sounds and their corresponding objects. Later, adults show young children that those objects and sounds can also be represented by marks on a page. With continued support from adults, children then learn how to decipher writing and eventually to write themselves. Each stage builds on what came before. Ensuring that children have adult caregivers who consistently engage in serve and return interaction, beginning in infancy, builds a foundation in the brain for all the learning, behavior, and health that follow.
What I like about this video, Jen, and for those that are listening, is that it really shows you what's happening within the brain circuitry, what's going on behind the scenes when we're having those conversations. Even now, as we're talking with you and we're showing you visuals of videos, and Jen and I are interchanging back and forth, or you're typing in the chat, in some ways, it's a bit of a serve and return in many respects. So we're practicing this now. And so the fact that as adults we're doing this, these are things that we can do with our children, with our infants. We can do this really, really early. So that's what I love about this video, that it really highlights that. Now we're going to show you another video. And in this video, this is basically an experiment that was done a while ago. But we want to show you this because we want to show you when interaction is removed. So we've talked a lot about interaction. We've told you how there's an emotional connection. We've said, hey, this is a really key, vital piece to the growth of our children, even as a prenatal stage before birth. But what if the interaction is removed? So this is called the still face experiment. And here's the question we want to pose to you. Did you know that babies spend 15 minutes of every waking hour looking at their caregivers' faces? Well, this study utilizes, we have the study we're going to actually put in there in the chat for you is a study that has head cams, and it's going to reveal the world of infants, what they actually see. But we also want to show you this video, which is a still face experiment, to show you that when you remove that interaction, what actually happens. So there's going to be two pieces that are going to go in here. One, you're going to see this video, and then we're also going to put in the chat a resource that shows the visuals from an infant's perspective as they're wearing these little head cams. So we'll start off with the video.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
I have to tell you, every time I watch that, and feel free to type in the chat, my heart just gets really heavy when the mom is not responding, because you just want to reach out and go pick that baby up.
It does. And I think that is another neurological perspective that we bring to it. So we have that emotional connection, but I don't know about you. Even though I know what's going to happen, I've seen this several times, I have heart palpitation. Like my heart starts to race a little bit because I'm trying to intervene and I can't. So, again, that's just a really foundational example of, physiologically how we're wired. You can go from that higher level emotion connection that they had at the beginning of the video to that survival. Fight, flight, you see the child move in different ways that, that escape, reach out, freeze, there's all kinds of things that the child's trying to do to reconnect.
And then immediately, what is amazing is that as soon as mom turns around and says, "It's okay, all is well, the world is right," and you just see that love, that instant connection again. And so we see the power of the connections. We see the power of the emotions. We see that those interactions are so important and that they're key. Think about it, even as an adult, when you get ignored, somebody listen to me, it's the same way. But for our young ones, our little ones, they're expressing it in a different way, but it's the same thing.
Absolutely.
It's the same thing. So that always chokes both of us up. So sorry, you guys. We know that's, even though we've seen it a lot of times, every time we watch it, we always have the same reaction. I get upset with that mom for a minute, even though it's an experiment.
Yes, it is hard to watch.
It is. So, and we got some great comments in the chat. So thank you for responding to that. We'll drop in again the other resource, which has the head cams. So we're going to drop that in for you all as well in a few seconds. And so you'll be able to see that resource as another resource in the chat for you. And that's just another study that was done. Now, this one is really powerful, I think.
Yeah, we could do a whole another hour probably just on this.
Yes, but we won't do that. We won't because we know we're on limited time. But just take a look at that. No electronic language form can match the capacity of an engaged human conversational partner. There's no credible scientific data to support the claim, but what we know is that those back and forth communication exchanges between adults and babies, they really make a difference in a baby's brain. And so we know that that's important. And sometimes we know that we don't always have that ability, but those nurturing interactions, those are investments, investments for a lifetime. And so there's power in that. And so we just want to kind of let that sit with you, because we think that sometimes a statement in a picture is worth 1,000 words plus.
Absolutely. So we're going to take just a short amount of time to talk about language elements, and we're going to talk about just some key things that no matter what your role is in the life of a child that you can take away. And this has been really, I think, rewarding for us as we've worked with families. There's something that every person draws onto and kind of attaches to, and we love that if they just start to do these things embedded in their daily routines, how much of an impact it's going to make, not just on the language development side, but the relationship side and the bond between parents and caregivers and their children. So the first thing you want to think about is greetings, because we know that there are several times a day that you can engage with a child. Of course, when they wake up in the morning, when you leave and enter rooms, when you're saying goodnight, there are all kinds of opportunities to just zero in and connect with the baby. As Krista was mentioning, it's the 15 minutes out of an hour that children really spend looking at faces. And I think another important tidbit I always connect to with greetings and making sure that you zoom in and make that eye contact and connect is that all the different species, even talking about animals, early on, any animal or any really species that requires a caregiver to sustain life has contrasting eye colors.
Oh, we talked about
We
that.
talked
too.
about that. Yes, and I'm
theory.
so fascinated. It's really very intriguing. But so there are some species out there of certain snakes and insects that don't have any contrasting color in their eyes, and so those are the animals that once they're born, they just go off on their own, and they're okay to survive in the environment on their own. But that contrasting eye color is something that draws in a baby of any species that needs to depend on their caregiver for their development and their survival. So I just think that's so intriguing. So every time you do that greeting, it's of course very sweet and connecting, but it's also really a survival mechanism, which I think is just incredible. The second one, when we talk about narrating actions, is actually one of my very favorites to talk about. And it's really one of my favorite things to talk about with dads. Dads really connect to this one because when we talk about narrating actions and what we're doing throughout our day as we're doing it, something that's really great to connect to is you want to think about talking to your baby throughout your day, or your older children, not just your baby, throughout the day, as if you're a sportscaster, but we're not talking about the sportscasters that are on TV. That know that you can also see what's happening and they're just chiming in to fill in some blanks for you and give you the highlights. We want you to narrate actions throughout your child's day as if you're that radio commentator.
Be descriptive.
Yes, be descriptive. You are watching and engaged with something that your audience, it's your audience, who in this case is your children, can't really see or don't have all of the words for. So you are giving them the words about everything in the environment. So maybe not just what you're naming or touching or doing, but every other thing around that. So narrating actions as if you are that radio broadcaster. And dads are like, oh, every time I say that to a group of dads, they really get that. They're like, okay, so not just here's your apple, these are, I'm going to walk over to the refrigerator and get an apple for our snack today. Let's see what I like, a red apple, a green apple, or a yellow apple.
And you might even witness this in the grocery store when you see families in the grocery store and they're describing what that is, if they're in the produce section or if they're in the freezer section. And so you might see that where the kids go, oh, it's cold. And what is that? So all of those things are they're making so many impacts and connections from that because of those descriptions that you said.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think we can find ourselves as we learn more about this, utilizing every opportunity to do that. Even if we don't have young children, if we have older children, or when we're shopping with our spouse, we kind of find ourselves expanding on that a little bit more. Krista's laughing. She can probably hear me doing this. Hey, down there in the freezer section on the second door on the left.
When you said that, I was like, oh boy, we're going to another place there.
I know. See, this is where I get excited, Krista. So what we want to also do is just direct attention. So if you hear an airplane and you're outside playing, using those direction words and talking about looking up and what do you see moving across the sky, and that you also hear that. Directing attention to things in the environment is critical for brain and language development. Telling stories, and we like to say tell stories because of course we think books and reading are critical. We always say that children's literature is where all the good words live. But it's also important to tell stories too, and that language component and that memory and emotional connection. And also what's near and dear to my heart is the generational component of telling stories.
That is, and it is so powerful too, because, you know, even though, you know, as we approach different gatherings and holidays and people come around and they tell those stories, those are engaging. Those are so powerful because you're remembering those things. So I appreciate you saying that too with those stories. So it doesn't always have to be in the book, but it's the visual again, as you're mentioning, telling the story and seeing this play out.
Yeah, and as we've talked about with technology and how that's really become so much a part of our everyday, it's also writing and modeling, capturing those stories, which is another critical element that we could continue to talk about. Also asking questions is so important, and asking children questions whether they can respond to that interaction or not. So like we said earlier, you know, would you like a red, green, or a yellow apple? You know, they may point. They may reach for one, they may not.
And they may want both.
They may, absolutely.
Yeah, and so that can lead to another conversation. So those questions and those curious questions lead to more curious questions.
Absolutely. Are you cold? Oh, when it's cold outside, we put on our jacket, you know, or we need to put on our gloves. So lots of opportunities for that as our seasons are changing to continue those conversations. And of course, the last thing is soothe. Any opportunity we have to soothe our children, of course, builds not only language, but those ability to know that those interactions with our children are responsive, just like we saw in that still face experiment.
Exactly. Thank you so much for walking through those. Those are so powerful. So this here is just another indication of that serve and return, but it's basically that back and forth piece. We know we showed this to you before, but we just want to show you this again. As stated by Patricia Cole, who's co-director of the University of Washington's Institute for Learning and Brain Sciences, it's important work towards interaction and engagement around language. You want to engage the infant to get to that baby to do that babble back, is what they call it, the babble back. The more you get that serve and return, which is that volley that goes back and forth, the more language advances. So think about it like a volley. So we just want to show you this really quickly so you can see this volley go back and forth.
Want to help build a child's brain in 5 easy steps? You can. And it's fun. You can do what scientists call serve and return with any child, even before babies can talk.
Serve and return is a simple back and forth activity where the child leads and you follow. Like this child, who decides she wants to dance, and mom joins her.
You can use 5 easy steps anytime or anywhere, like when you're shopping for groceries or making a snack.
To learn the 5 simple steps of serve and return, and to begin building a child's brain today, check out our video tutorial on our website.
What I love about that serve and return is that, again, it's just 5 easy steps that's needed with that. And then, oops. And I think this last one here is just something that we call Parenteese. So it's another aspect of serve and return, but many of you may have seen it. This is just really quick. We want to show you this. Comedian DJ Pryor and his 19-month-old son, Kingston, actually were sitting together and they were talking. Now, this video went viral, but it gives an example of what we call Parenteese. And this is just basically a unique approach that's directed speech. It helps your baby learn language. It helps with physical and motor development. It boosts brain functions, and it enhances the emotional development and bonding of the parent. It's used across many languages by parents from various cultures and ethnic backgrounds, but it includes, for example, you're going to hear in this quick video, like high-pitched voices, short, simple sentences, elongated phrases and vowels. So take a listen and a watch, I should say, at this quick video.
Okay. They need to work on that, right? Yes, okay. Did you understand it though? No. No. Okay. All right. Huh? Oh, no, not this one. This is the grand finale of this. Yeah, that's the last one. That's what I was wondering. I don't know what they're gonna do next season because they did some stuff this time. Exactly what I was thinking. Oh yeah. Right. Don't bring that again. You know what I'm saying? Don't do the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah. Yeah. Like go somewhere else with that, but don't bring it here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what I said. And then it was like, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, what in the world? But don't do that here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Really? I thought the same thing. We think a lot alike, huh? Oh, that's crazy. Right.
This is the funniest video. We love watching that, but they're talking.
Absolutely.
That's a conversation. It's not anything that, that's just per chance. It's happening back and forth. And you notice that the baby was just kind of waiting for his dad to respond, and then they went back and forth on that.
Yeah.
That is so wonderful. So what we've created, and hopefully this will help you, we know we only have a few more minutes, but we want to just show you this tips guide that we, through the Talk With Me Baby work that we've been engaged with, this tips guide is something that we've been sharing through our Talk First Start work. And it really just helps to engage families with their young children so that they can remember some of the things that we just talked about today. So you'll see there the T for talking with your baby, paying attention to your baby and the interactions and how that's going to grow their brain, practicing and singing. So this piece is just listed here. And these are things that, believe it or not, that as parents we might be doing, but this really just helps to focus it in on the T, the I, the P, and the S. Now I have to do my quote real quick. This is from my colleague, partner here who states this, and you'll see where Jen says, we believe that the trajectory of children's lives can be changed when families and caregivers understand the significance of language nutrition, how to provide an environment which is environment rich and responsive interactions. So Jen, I think that's powerful.
I think so too, and I think we have a lot of people that are with us that are making comments in the chat box that really do recognize their impact, and that's what we love about this work is it really does take a village. And I think I'm with Colleen. I know every time I watch all these babies that it does make you just want to go have a baby or snuggle a baby, that's for sure. So Krista, let's talk a little bit about, we know this research, we know we have lots of great partnerships in our community. So what are we doing to make sure that we can make sure that families and caregivers have this message?
So one of the things that we do in our community, it's actually an initiative through Great Start for Great Futures, and it's called Talk First Start. And when we started looking at this, all of our partners came together and they basically said, what can we do to really operationalize this language nutrition, knowing what we know about education, knowing what we know about brain development. And so Talk First Start is the operational framework for us moving this forward, helping families and caregivers understand the important role that they play in shaping their baby's language development and the future academic achievement, and how they are their baby's first and best teacher. But we also wanted to empower families and caregivers to practice language nutrition by building their skills and coaching them with this. And so we've been actively working in our community with our community health workers and our local health professionals, our educators, our business leaders, you name it, all throughout the community, really to just share this message about talking first. And so you'll notice there the tagline that says, building brains before birth and beyond, because some of us don't realize that that's what we're doing. We are building brains before birth and beyond. And I think before we close, we just want to leave you with just the fifth key takeaway here, which is this notion for 5. And so we're going to just share that with you in the chat, that key takeaway there, where you'll see that you're striving for 5. And that's why we have that one hand that's listed there, right? Aiming for 5 serve and return interactions. So we just talked about that serve and return. We showed you a couple videos of what that represents. We also talked about the 5 senses, using your 5 senses to describe. In other words, as Jen said, being that sportscaster to describe what's happening and what you're seeing. And so whether it's through visuals, whether it's through singing, whether it's through reading, whether it's through stories, in any of those daily interactions that you have. So it could be while you're outside, while you're inside, while they're getting ready to go to bed, while you're setting them up to eat dinner or getting them ready to take their bath. All of those things can be used. So again, we want to leave you with that 5th key takeaway, striving for 5, which is all part of those interactions that we make. And so this is actually concluding our conversation. We have a video that we'll drop in at a later point, which is really talking about the culmination of the work for Talk First Start. It was a community production that was put together, and it was on a cold day, but,
Very cool.
but we had a great time. We had a young person that was with us. She was under the age of 5, and even though it was very cold, we promised her ice cream at the end. And so she stayed with us the entire time because she got ice cream. In fact, we all got ice cream. So it made the whole day really well. So on behalf of State Support Team Region 9, our Stark Education Partnership, Great Start for Great Futures, and as well as Altman, thank you so much for having us as a part of the Altman Health Talk, the power of language nutrition. Thank you. Thank you.
It starts with you. What if I told you that you are the one who your child was entrusted to ensure a healthy life? You have the key to unlocking the door to future success in school and to leading your child down a path filled with choices to do whatever he or she wants to do. You are your child's first and most important teacher. Just like our bodies need healthy food and clean water, a child's brain needs language nutrition, which simply means lots of loving words from you to grow before birth and beyond. The quantity and quality of nourishing language, like healthy food, is critical to brain development. And the best part of language nutrition is that only one person is needed: you.
If all you do is talk with your child in positive ways, tell him or her how wonderful they are or how smart they are, as much as you can, you are giving your child a great start for a great future. As you interact with your child before they are even born, the moments you spend talking, listening, and responding to your child in everyday moments will help to grow a healthy brain ready to build positive relationships and strong foundations for learning. When you build these strong connections in your daily routines, your child will be prepared to learn to read and later read to learn, which creates a positive impact on both your family and our community. You've got this.
It continues with us. We all have the opportunity to engage with children in our community, not only as parents, but grandparents, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, caregivers, and friends. While in line at the grocery store, getting on the bus, at the doctor's office, wherever our days find us, we all have a role to play in helping our children have great starts for great futures. Because while we know parents are absolutely a child's first and most important teacher, we all need community. So know that together, we've got this.